One wrong move, and he would die. Joab served King David and became the strongest warrior in the kingdom. But everything changed after one tragic moment. His enemy had killed his little brother in an accident which enraged Joab. He killed the king's own son. He betrayed his most loyal friend. He killed his own replacement. He was a very ruthless man, but that would soon come to an end. Joab was one of King David's greatest warriors. He had two brothers, Abishai and Asahel, and all three fought for David from the very beginning. Of the three, Joab rose the highest. He became commander of David's entire army, the strongest military man in the kingdom. He was loyal to David without question, and he was fearless in battle, but he was also ruthless. During a war that split the whole nation in two, when Israel's first king, Saul, died in battle, the kingdom broke apart. David became king over one half, and a rival king, backed by a commander named Abner, ruled the other half. The two sides eventually fought each other in an open battle, and by the end of the day, Abner's army had broken and started to run. As Abner fled the field, Joab's younger brother Asahel, a soldier known for how fast he could run, chased after him. Abner turned and saw him coming and called out a warning.
"Turn aside! Fight someone else!"
Asahel kept running. Abner warned him again, telling him plainly that he did not want to kill Joab's own brother. Asahel would not stop. When there was nowhere left to run and no more room to argue, Abner struck backward with the end of his spear, and it killed Asahel instantly. Joab did not take the murder of his little brother lightly. To everyone else on that battlefield, Asahel was another soldier who had fallen in war. But to Joab, he was the younger brother he had spent his entire life beside. Long before any of them became known as warriors, Joab, Abishai, and Asahel were simply three brothers growing up together. They grew up in a time where a man learned early that knowing how to fight was the most important thing in life. The three brothers were different from the beginning. Asahel, the youngest, was known for his incredible speed and energy, always wanting to prove that he belonged beside his older brothers. Abishai grew into a fearless fighter, a man who was always ready to step forward when danger came. But Joab was different. Even as the oldest brother, he naturally became the one who led. Growing up together created a bond between the brothers that would follow them onto the battlefield. They did not just fight beside each other because they served the same king. They fought because they were family. After the death of Asahel, this became a wound that never healed in Joab. He chased Abner for the rest of that day, all the way to a hill in the distance, before finally agreeing to call his men back for the night. But something in him had already changed. From that day forward, he was waiting for his chance to kill Abner. Years passed, and the war between the two kingdoms slowly turned in David's favor. Eventually, Abner grew tired of fighting a war he could no longer win, and he came to make peace with David directly. David welcomed him warmly. He held a feast for him and sent him away in peace, believing the long war was finally over. Joab was away when this happened. When he returned and learned that Abner had come and gone freely, without any punishment for what he had done to Asahel, he went straight to David, furious.
"What have you done? You let him go, and now he's gone for good."
David gave no answer that satisfied him. So Joab acted on his own. He sent riders after Abner without telling David and had him brought back to the city. At the gate, Joab walked toward him like an old friend. "How are you, my brother?" he said warmly, reaching out to take hold of Abner's beard as if to kiss him in greeting. Abner never saw the sword hidden in Joab's other hand. Joab drove it into his stomach, and Abner died there in the street. The peace David had just made with the north was undone in a single moment, and the man responsible was David's own commander. Not long after this, David set his eyes on capturing the city of Jerusalem for himself. He announced to his army that whoever led the attack and struck the city first would be named commander over the entire army. Joab took the challenge and led the charge himself, becoming the first man into the city. True to his word, David gave him the position. From that day forward, Joab commanded every soldier in Israel. At that time, Joab had a very loyal friend. His name was Uriah. During long campaigns, when most soldiers slept, Joab and Uriah would still be awake beside the dying fire, speaking about the battles they had survived. One night, after a difficult victory, Uriah noticed Joab sitting alone sharpening his sword. "You never stop thinking about the next battle, do you?" Uriah asked. Joab looked at him and answered, "Because the enemy doesn't warn you before he strikes." Uriah looked around at the soldiers sleeping beside them. If a man calls you brother, he should never be the one holding the knife behind your back. Joab looked back into the fire and said nothing. Years later, David had done something terrible. He had taken another man's wife for himself, gotten her pregnant, and now needed her husband gone without anyone finding out the truth. The husband's name was Uriah, fighting far away at the front lines of a siege. David wrote a letter to Joab, sealed it, and sent it back to the war with Uriah himself carrying it, never knowing what was written inside. The letter gave Joab a simple, terrible order. Place Uriah where the fighting is worst, then pull everyone else back and let him die there alone. Joab read the letter and said nothing about it to Uriah. He was devastated. He looked over the enemy's walls and found the place where the fiercest fighters were gathered.
Send him there. There? But Commander, that's certain death! He won't survive that.
Joab answered simply.
It has to be done.
The attack went forward exactly as planned. The enemy soldiers rushed out to meet the charge, and just as the fighting reached its worst, Joab's men pulled back, leaving Uriah standing alone. He was struck down there exactly the way David had ordered. Joab sent a messenger back to Jerusalem with careful instructions on exactly what to say if David grew upset about the number of men lost in that attack.
If he asks why you got so close to the wall, just add this at the end. Your servant Uriah is dead also.
The messenger delivered the report exactly as instructed, and David answered without any concern at all. "Don't let it trouble you," he said. "The sword takes one man as easily as another." Joab had obeyed the darkest order David ever gave him, without hesitation and without ever asking why. Years after that, David's own family began falling apart. His son Absalom eventually rose up in rebellion against David himself, gathering enough support from the people that David was forced to flee his own city. When the two armies finally prepared to meet in battle, David gave one clear order to every commander marching out, loud enough for the whole army to hear it. "Deal gently for my sake with the young man Absalom," he said. Joab heard this order with everyone else. He ignored it completely. During the battle, a soldier came running to Joab with urgent news. Absalom, fleeing on his mule, had gotten caught by his own hair in the branches of a tree, left hanging there helplessly while his mule ran off without him. Joab asked the soldier immediately why he hadn't killed him on the spot. The soldier answered that he had heard the king's order with his own ears and would never touch Absalom, no matter what reward was offered. Joab did not waste any more time. He took 3 spears in his hand and drove them straight into Absalom's heart, while the young man still hung there alive in the tree. When news of Absalom's death reached David, the king broke down completely. He wept as he climbed the stairs above the city gate, crying out for his son over and over, wishing out loud that he had died instead. His grief spread through the entire army until the soldiers who had won the battle that day crept quietly back into the city, ashamed. "You have humiliated every man who saved your life today," he told the king plainly. "If you don't go out right now and speak to them, not one of them will stay by your side by morning." David listened. He rose from his grief and went out to meet his soldiers at the gate, but he never forgave Joab for what he had done. As soon as the rebellion was over, David stripped Joab of his command. and gave the army instead to a different man entirely. Someone who had actually fought on Absalom's side during the rebellion. Joab said nothing about this insult out loud. He simply waited. Joab got his chance to get his old job back soon enough. A new rebellion broke out somewhere else in the kingdom. David sent the new commander to stop it, but that commander took too long gathering soldiers. David got tired of waiting, so he sent Joab's men out to deal with the threat instead. On the road, Joab ran into that same commander. Joab walked up to him like they were old friends.
How are you, my brother?
He said, reaching out one hand like he was going to hug him, but he had a sword hidden in his other hand. Before the man knew what was happening, Joab stabbed him, and he died right there in the road. Joab didn't stop or explain himself to anyone. That's how Joab got his job back for good. Years later, David got old and weak. One of his sons, Adonijah, saw his chance and started trying to make himself king before David had officially picked who would take over. Joab, after being loyal to David his whole life, made his final big mistake here. He picked Adonijah's side instead of Solomon, even though David had already promised the throne to Solomon. When Adonijah threw a party to celebrate becoming king, Joab was there celebrating with him. But the party didn't last long. Word came in that Solomon had already been made king, with David's own approval. Everyone at Adonijah's party panicked and ran. The whole plan fell apart before it even really started. Before David died, he gave his son Solomon some final advice. He told him to remember everything Joab had done, killing men who weren't even in a real war. And he told Solomon not to just let Joab die peacefully when he got old. After David died, Solomon began removing everyone he believed threatened his throne. Solomon had him killed. When Joab heard this, he knew he was probably next. So he ran to a holy place and grabbed onto the altar, since back then that was a spot where people could go to ask for protection. Solomon sent a man named Benaiah to deal with Joab. Come out, Benaiah told him. Joab said, "No, I'd rather die right here." Benaiah went back and told Solomon what Joab said. Solomon replied, "Then let it happen exactly like that." Benaiah went back a second time and told Joab to come out again. Joab said the same thing. "I'll die here." This time, Benaiah didn't leave. He killed Joab right there next to the altar.